Who called it, baby? This guy! This cry for help, which you clearly have all the attention you need. No, he called that Pearl was going to be the one that was resetting it up.
Yeah.
But again, like good writing works, even if you see it coming, it's still done so well, and it opens up so many great opportunities and great discussions.
It was the second time she fused. I'm like, she's enjoying this way too much. I'm like, yeah.
Well, and what I love is that even when it showed her crying at the beginning, like, don't cry, Pearl, like, they made it funny, so you wouldn't immediately suspect, like, she would want to do it, because she obviously really likes it, but it could be a goofy moment, it could be a silly moment. Goddamn, this
Poor messed up.
This show really is so good. They always know just the right balance of detail and vagueness, and they know exactly how much to give so that, hey, we're not talking about nothing, we're talking about something that you can connect with, but it's still left just vague enough that you can connect it to so many various
Even the
things.
random scenes, I was like, early on, I was just like, I would have killed to be a layout artist on this show. The background work, some of the production design, even storyboarding, I just love all of the layout work. I can't quite pin it down. There's some of the faded colors and stuff reminds me of the 70s. Some of it is very 1960s, and some of it in the color scheme is 80s.
Yeah, right,
It's this very sort of pan 60s, 70s, 80s sort of work where they took sort of the best of everything, and it really is its own little universe. I'm like, I can't pinpoint exactly what it's doing, but
even when they fused, I mean, that was Mario World, what they play. It was almost like the Mario World star music. It's funny, the fusion,
I will say, Garnet and Pearl's fusion.
that's not what I expected it was going to be like.
No. And honestly, like, it's just like, well, it definitely was not as cool as Garnet and Amethyst.
Yeah, that's still my favorite. When they fused again, even if it was just for a second, I'm like, God, is that the coolest one?
It was interesting. It was others where I'm like, well, I can definitely sense Pearl in this.
Yeah, it's not something where I'm like, oh, what a disappointment. It's not like that. It's
there was
just
a
like
suaveness to it I actually liked, but it was very fastidious, like sort of almost like a fancy lounge singer act. Like there was kind of a class to it and a little bit of comedy and
which I wouldn't expect.
It kind of got on my
like,
nerves a little fast. I'm not gonna lie, but I think maybe that was the point.
But again, I kind of like that. I didn't see it coming, and it sort of forces me to think, well, why would it kind of be like that?
My first reaction was, wow, that's not what I expected.
Yeah,
like
I like,
surprise!
Then you have to be like, is it just the excitement of the character? Is it just the enthusiasm? Sort of taking over or sort of sharing because they both seem very even Garnet was very happy. Afterwards, they're like, jumping up and down, like, they loved it and everything.
But afterwards, not so much.
No. And it shows, I think this one's good because it also shows the seriousness of fusion. Again, not totally understanding the culture, but like this is something that you kind of do. It's a major thing. It's a major part in like, a relationship or like a connection. It's a major connection.
And like friendship, you can get a high off it and abuse it. That was like a drug high.
It can be like friendship. It can be like a romantic relationship. It can be like sex.
Yeah.
It can be like kissing. It can be like any of this.
When
stuff.
you see that in like, I tend to see it in extroverts more, but I've seen introverts that definitely get it, where you get this like attachment syndrome to a friend, and it's almost like it gets a little weird.
I was gonna say I almost see it in introverts more, because there is kind of this. Like,
there's
ways
less
that they find
friends
that one or two people.
I've seen it in both.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it definitely happens to both.
it's a little more flighty with extroverts because they can do it with almost anybody, but with introverts, when they find the one, it's like
that one or two people that they're just going to cling to.
But I definitely see it in extroverts. It's spread a little more evenly, maybe.
Yeah,
amongst
I think
extroverts.
that's it.
But it's
There's
definitely
more
there.
people.
Like they lose that drug high when they're not around people. Whereas with introverts, it's like they can go longer, I think, without the drug high. But when they get that drug high, they cling to it a little more. I don't know.
I think that's a very good way of putting it. But yeah, and I just love you can make so many connections with that, and these episodes like this, I think of, like anything with the fusion especially, I think of like when Steven and Connie fused. It almost feels like, like something out of Wild Strawberries or, some sort of abstract film or a dream or something like that. Like, you get it, like the ideas are there and the emotions are there, just the exact reasons and logic and details aren't. But they drop just enough so that you can make that connection to whatever you want. And you still feel it even though you can't fully explain it. And I love anything that can do it. I'm always so amazed that a children's show can do that so consistently. And it's not by accident. And it's so meticulously planned. So I love the way they do it. And
well, it's the dynamic between the three of them. Well, the four of them, really.
Yeah.
But
Steven's
like the
always
way
kind
she
of on the
says is
outside,
like,
but
we
yeah.
need to be careful this time, so I need to use Pearl. And we're too reckless when it's the two of us together. And I've been in friends groups like that, where if you get a couple of them together, they'll do something crazy, while the other one will be careful if they're together. And it's just like the dynamics of friends group and cliques. Like, I thought that was an interesting.
Well, and how
thing.
how clever to show it from Amethyst's point of view of her feeling left out, and that's her that's needed to complete this job at the end.
Well, because it normally seems to be Garnet and Amethyst. So I get that Amethyst would feel kind of like left out and just like boop boop boop.
You mean Garnet and Pearl? You mean?
No,
You
I mean
said
it's,
it only seems to be Garnet and Amethyst. Do you mean Garnet and Pearl, or still Garnet and Amethyst?
No, I mean when they're fusing, it's Garnet and Amethyst.
Well, isn't usually all they did it once as Garnet and Amethyst, and then they did it once as the three of them. Because that's what they originally wanted to do. They wanted to do all three, and they said no, that's too creative. We can't. Or what was it too? I can't
I guess
remember.
it depends on the dynamic. I always feel like Garnet and Amethyst sometimes are closer because they're more punch first, ask questions later. Like, I mean, Garnet's definitely the more balanced between Garnet and Amethyst.
See, she
but
seems like a
she's-
perfect mix between Amethyst and Pearl. Sort of the thinking, sit down, let's think of a plan, and then the punch first, ask questions never kind of thing.
To a degree, but I would still group her probably closer to Amethyst than I would Pearl.
Maybe. But it's one of those things where when we got to the ending and they just walk past each other, and it's like, sometimes life doesn't end like it does in cartoons. I'm thinking to myself, end, stop here, and it stops there, and nothing gives me more thrill than when something stops when I say it should stop here.
Scene.
Yeah, it's like, and I love it when again, it's like Rocky. It just knew the exact moment to stop.
Well, it was just such a way of saying, yeah, this isn't going to be one of those fucking cartoons. I was like, yes! Oh my god! You just gave a middle finger to all cartoons that wrap up like so perfectly at the end of each episode. And I'm like, nope.
Yeah, no, this, I love it. I just love the new things, the new adult things that they're finding ways to get into kids shows, not only to give kids like, a more adult experience, but they can watch it again years later or watch it now. I think it really helps develop them and, be like, hey, remember that really simple show we saw when we were younger and we liked? I'm watching it again. It actually has a lot more complex ideas I never thought of, and that forces you to see the complex and the simple and the simple and the complex. And I love that.
Well,
I love that this show can do that.
I always say I could write a book about Pearl. And just another page in the book. It's going to be longer than the Bible. Like, it's just... She has so many issues, but that's why I like her the best. She's the most complex character, at least in my opinion, but...
No, she probably is the most... Well...
Like, I'm not saying everything she does is right. That, like, this is a great case of she is in the wrong, but it's just like, I'm so fascinated because I'm like, well, I see where she's coming from. Like, she is so fucking damaged. Even more so than, like I get that kind of from Amethyst, but I feel Amethyst is more of, like, a little kid damage. Like, she can still work through it. Pearl just is, like, beyond. Like, she's got so much baggage. Like, she's gonna be sitting at the baggage claim for hours. It's just, yeah.
And Garnet is technically...
You're gonna be able to fit all that baggage on that plane, honey.
Garnet is technically two people. Well, doesn't that make sense the more I think about it?
That might be why Garnet's more balanced.
Yeah, because it's literally, I mean, when we saw those two characters, it did seem like, hey, this one seems very Amethyst, this one seems very Pearl. You know, the one seemed much more logical and thinking and subdued. The other seemed much more, badass and ready to
But
fight.
this is the interesting thing about Pearl, is she is so practical and so think first, punch later.
Just making sure it's... Oh, I can't see the... I was making sure the volume was going. Sorry, I still have it on expression. Sorry. I didn't see the bar going, but it should still be going. Sorry. I interrupted your thought.
Take me out for a cup of coffee first. We don't have to go that fast, like straight into it.
You didn't like when I put my head like that?
I
think we would make
my
a great
shoulder
fusion.
Still smells like you, and it's weirding me out.
People are already working on fan art of our fusion. Our creepy.
Creepy fusion.
fusion.
Why did you have to say that?
By the time this video ends, I want 5 different fan arts of our fusion.
Hey, I was fine with our twincest pictures we kept getting, but the fusion's just too far. My face and your mug are ugly enough as it is. We don't need to combine the two.
Sorry, finish your thought. I really interrupted.
I didn't remember what my thought was, because now all I'm thinking of is our fusion, and it's
it must have been
fucking
important.
Oh, no, I like this episode too because she is so practical and think and use logic and this and that, but completely throws it out the fucking window here. Like her emotions, like that she keeps burying, like is completely interfering with her work because that logical side just went out the fucking door.
Well, and we see this all the time.
I'm just gonna keep rebuilding this because that's an actual fucking signal. She's putting the planet in danger now because she's so fucking lonely. So I was like, that's why I like this character. It's just layers and layers and layers and layers.
Well, and we've seen that before in lots of people that need a lot of control and, need it so much that when something finally falls apart, they'll go to these terrible lengths or, even just, they'll sacrifice emotion so much for control that when they do actually have something that's very emotionally fulfilling, they will do everything they can to control it and get it over and over and over. I thought this was so well put together.
I like how all 3 of them are damaged, and Garnet probably seems like the most put together. Mm-hmm. And Amethyst damage...
Because she literally is put together.
Amethyst damage seems more kind of childlike, and she seems a little more extroverted, while Pearl is like the older, more introverted sort of baggage. Mm-hmm. So it's really all 3 of them put together. It just... I love it.
Yeah, and there's no...
I love it!
There's no character either, I'm realizing more and more that I'm like, oh, it's a Pearl episode. Oh, it's an Amethyst episode. Instead, at first I kind of was.
At first when it was
Amethyst, Garnet, but it's like all of it.
At first when it was Amethyst only, I was kind of like, but now Amethyst is really good. So all 3 of them, I was more of a Garnet Pearl kind of.
But what makes it even better is that the characters
I'm a Pearl guy.
You're a Pearl girl.
Yes! Okay, I gotta make a t-shirt.
You make a shirt? Yeah, make it.
Before this show ends, I'm gonna have a shirt that says fucking Pearl girl. Be like the Mabel sweater.
But with all the characters, you go back from the beginning and watch it. None of them have changed. We just found out more about them. And again, that is such good writing. That's not like, this character got more interesting stuff. They were always the same. We're just finding out more about their past.
There's no writer's desperation.
No.
Like, these characters were fleshed out. I don't feel like there's a number of shows where you can feel that the writer's making it up as it goes.
Mm. Well, that works too.
And that works fine. Like Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, he said the tale grew in the telling. That was his way of saying, I was making this shit up as I go. And it doesn't always work, and when it does, it works great. This one, I feel like these characters, like Rebecca Sugar or the writers or whoever, there was some idea in their head from the beginning. I feel like this wasn't getting as made up as it went. Maybe if it was going on behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, clearly a lot of the stuff
because the early episodes are a little more. Yeah, the early stuff is more fluffy. So maybe as they're working on the fluff episodes behind the scenes, but it doesn't feel like, we're writing ourselves in the corner. We're really desperate. We have to. No, this feels really well put together.
Yeah, they still can have an episode where they can either do more of a light fluff episode, or even when they go into more emotional ones, because of the way it's structured, it doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be like, well, that continuity ties into this other continuity and how they confuse it. It's like they can, you don't exactly know what the fusion means. You're still discovering
how many shows out there have the opposite problem? It's like you could tell they didn't have a plan. Or X-Files is my favorite example. Those first 9, it's come back and it's been fun to watch so far, but those first 9 seasons, I'm like, you could tell Chris Carter had no fucking clue, 0 where he was going with any of this shit, and he just kept pulling random things out and throwing shit against the wall to see what stuck. And
which again is not always bad. I mean, that can work, but then there's times. No. I'm not saying for that show, but I'm saying in general, if you make it up as you go, we're not saying don't do that. That's bad.
That show was made by the fun characters. For me, it wasn't made by the mythological, the myth arc.
Yeah.
You know, the plot, the government conspiracy plot. I actually thought that was the weakest part of the show. So
yeah.
But yeah, and then there's other times where you just see a show or something, and it's like, well, where did this character come from? Like, this seems like a complete 180. Oh, well, as we with The Dark Knight Rises, like Alfred.
Yeah.
I'm like, where was this guy in Dark Knight? Like, now it's like, oh, I'm like,
no, it's all planned out. When they had Ra's al Ghul in the first film and they killed him off, they're like, Bane is going to continue his story in the next film. No, the film after that. Brilliant.
First, it's about the Joker and escalation, and then we're going to drop that whole thing and go back.
Right back to the first plot line we had before.
Like, that's a great example of, like, I feel like Nolan probably blew his load on The Dark Knight, and, like, that was the story he really wanted to tell, and then they're like, well, we need a third one. Got to trilogy this out.
But I mean, I did Dark Knight. We will pay you enough that you never have to work again. Neither will your children or your children's children. It's like
Frank Herbert, who wrote the Dune series, like he said after God Emperor Dune, they like, I really was done, but they kept offering me paycheck after paycheck, and it's like, who can refuse money like that?
Well, no, at My Python, they said that too, with Meeting of Life. They said, if you do one more movie, we can make it where you never have to work again.
Okay, another great example would be Korra. Like, that one, I don't think it was their fault. I think they had a plan for one season, and then Nick kept dicking them around, and so you could tell they didn't have any idea initially, because they were like, this was meant to be a one-season show. That's what you assholes were telling us. You weren't going to renew us, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we got a second season, so they're rewriting parts of the first season, then the second season, then the third. Like, you could tell that it was just going in all sorts of directions.
So still a good show. But
yeah, and I like Legend of Korra a lot, but this doesn't feel that way. It's refreshing to feel something that feels like, yeah, they got a real grasp on these guys.
Yeah. Definitely really well done. Very nicely done episode. And, yeah, looking forward to more great ones like that. So, let's get to that.
Later.